Steelers Nation. You are now listening to Good Steelers Morning, your daily dose of Pittsburgh Steelers news, rumors, and everything black and gold. Now, here is your host, Justin Ottstadt.
It is Friday, May 17th, 2024, and this is a topic I actually wanted to talk about yesterday, that topic being Cam Heyward. It was a topic that I did discuss earlier in the year on my previous website, which is no longer available, and so I want to take the opportunity to talk about whether or not the Steelers should extend Cam Heyward's contract. And what better time to do it than now, because as you guys probably seen in the news, Cam is deciding to hold out in OTAs as he is waiting for the Steelers to make such a contract extension. The big question is Cam worth it? And so we'll get into that argument. But before we do that, I wanted to quickly remind everyone to hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, if you're watching on YouTube, that is, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, do us a favor and leave a review, as it definitely helps out the podcast and its growth. That said, man, let's get straight into this. It was previously reported that Cam Heyward, the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive captain, is negotiating a contract extension while training independently, foregoing his OTAs. Heyward, 35, aims to play for 2 to 3 more years. He is in the final season of his current contract with a $16 million salary for 2024. I want to stop there and really look into everything I just said. $16 million. We knew coming into this offseason that cap hit was going to be something the Steelers were going to have to address. They have not done so. They did other things to make cap space for the moves that they had, or that the moves they made, I should say. And Cam did address this back in January, quote unquote, saying, "I bust my butt in rehab, doing everything. I got to let things calm down. Screw the people who keep talking about me getting a pay cut." So in other words, Heyward is saying screw me, because I was definitely one of those people saying he needed to take a pay cut. One, because he's 35 years old, as I mentioned there. Two, he had the bad injuries. I know he's been productive for the most part prior to that, but we're talking about your most recent performance on the field. You had the injuries, you didn't produce last season, you weren't available, and you're getting older. You're not getting younger. And if I'm being honest, that's a problem for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And now I want to make this clear. I'm not saying Heyward should be released or traded or any of those things. I'm just saying that they need to make some cap space to bring other guys in to fill in those roles. And we'll come back to that part in a second, because there is a guy on the roster who could potentially make some noise in that department. Going back to the report, though, his previous season was injury plagued, as I already said, but he remains a vital player, having consistently performed at a high level prior to the injury. The Steelers may reconstructure his contract to reduce his cap hit, which they haven't done so yet. They might do that going forward here. At least that's what I hope. And by the way, I guess I'll just say this right off the bat and not make you guys wait. I do think the Steelers should extend Heyward. I would extend him for another year. I would split that $16 million up in some way or some fashion. I don't know if I would give this guy 3 years, but if they do, it wouldn't be anything out of the norm for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they take care of their players, especially their veterans, like a guy like Cam Heyward. Heyward's stance against a pay cut highlights his commitment to his value and future with the team. And so Heyward believes his value is much higher than what the fans and maybe even the team think. And that is the situation going on right now. In fact, He went on to his podcast, Not Just Football, and I quote, "First of all, it's voluntary. Let's get that straight. I'm working out, doing everything. I have always attended these, but at this time, it's just contract negotiations." I'm going to stop there real quick. It's nothing new. He's not the first player to skip out on OTAs. Everyone has seen so many players over the years do these things to get these contracts done. It's just typical football business. There's no issue here whatsoever. I want to make that clear. The problem here is whether or not he's worth extending, which I already said I do believe so, but I'm going to dive back into that in a little bit here. Let's get back into the quote. Here's the best part, folks. He says, "I want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, but we'll see what happens." Basically, I think he's saying here, he wants to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, but if the Steelers don't feel or don't agree with that, then he also has no problem moving on and moving to another team because he wants to play at least 2 to 3 seasons before hanging him up. And so if the Steelers aren't going to give him that contract extension, he's going to walk. And he's prepared for that. Going back into the quote, he says, "You got to do what's right for you. I'm training hard. There's nothing I'm not doing on and off the field. I'm doing everything possible, and we'll get there when we get there." End quote. Now, going back into my pushback on this, like the negatives here, again, the age. The age is the thing. It doesn't matter how great of a player you are. At some point, you're going to decline. You're going to start regressing. And that's not just football. I mean, that's just in general. Like, the older you get at your job, the less performance you have in what you do. That's just reality. I mean, there's exceptions, of course, but especially when it comes to like labor or, in this case, football, sports, those things apply. And so that's the only pushback I have here, because prior to the injury, this isn't the first time we heard these discussions about Heyward's age and where he was at. I mean, I heard people saying that he was getting old back when he was like 30, 31 years old, and he was still producing at a high level. Arguably, you can make this argument that going back to last season, if he didn't get injured and he didn't have those problems and he played a full season, he probably would have put up decent numbers. What were his numbers? In 2023, he had 33 tackles, 25 of which were solo, 2 sacks, and 1 pass breakup in 11 games. And so despite playing through a core muscle injury for much of the season, and that's the key, you say 11 games and you're like, well, that was a good chunk of games. He was playing through the injury for some of that. His leadership, his experience, his consistent performance over the years, again, prior to that injury, makes a pretty strong case for the Steelers to extend his contract. Now, I want to know what you guys think. As always, I like to include everybody in the community here. Go down in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Let me know what you think. Do you think the Steelers should extend Cam Heyward? Do you think he can still be productive, specifically in 2024? I really, really want to know. Now, there is one player on this roster that does make things a little interesting, because regardless if the Steelers extend Heyward or not, nothing changes here in regards to the defensive line situation. Yes, you got Larry Ogunjobi, who's definitely getting up there in age. He's creeping up on the 30-year mark. I wouldn't say that's a super negative by any means. Instead, I'll say that this defensive line needs a little bit more aggressiveness injected into it. Because, respectfully, outside of Cam, not too much is going on in that department. However, there is, or was, I should say, a rookie last season by the name of Keeanu Benton, who is being projected to be a breakout candidate, according to Pro Football Focus, who has showcased a lot of impressive stuff on the field during his rookie season. And the best part of it, he was at limited snaps there. He had 24 pressures last year with those limited snaps. And he narrowly missed several sacks on many of those pressures. And so his potential for a larger role this season stems from what he showcased last season. Being disruptive on the interior. Showcasing that ability to get to the quarterback. To disrupt the backfield. And so when you think about all these questions in regards to Cam Heyward, are the Steelers considering this? Is next year's draft, not to get too far ahead of time here, but are the Steelers going to go heavy on defensive line next season? Honestly, regardless of what happens here, probably. And so these are the things that are going to be considered in the coming weeks and potentially even months. Although I would imagine the Steelers are going to try to get this done one way or another. And again, going back to what I said, and I'll add another part to this, I do think the Steelers should extend him. But mainly, I would say the reason you want to extend him is because you don't have those other pieces to replace him fully. Because Larry Ogunjobi is another guy that's going to have this discussion at some point. And so the Steelers are going to have to really focus on defensive line next. That I personally feel like that's the next big spot that they got to all hands on deck. And so, again, I want you guys to go down in the comments if you're on the YouTube side of things. Let me know what you think in regards to this discussion. With that said, I'm going to get on out of here. We're already over 12 minutes into this. What a great week, folks. The Steelers schedule came out. Didn't really see too many comments on that yet. On the last episode, we had some issues with that, but whatever. You can also comment down in this video and let me know what you guys thought about that as well. Next week, we'll be back on Monday. Until then, Steelers Nation, go Steelers.